So, I don't want to wake her up. But, baby VT, Cheshire, Anya, and Brandy, let's have that sip together. It's only coffee for now. Or only water. Only water for now. But, yeah. Let's get them sippies. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Audio's good. That's great news. Hopefully you'll make yourself sleepy. It's only 6 p.m. here, so I won't be sleeping just yet. Oh my. So early. Not early. That was wrong. I did go to sleep earlier. I had when we ended stream yesterday, I had a headache, and it only got worse. And, Eggy gave me a little neck massage, and, some head pats. I fell right out, but unfortunately woke up at 11. And, I thought it was 3 or 4 a.m. when I woke up. Not the case. It was 11 p.m. And, I'm not tired. But if this doesn't work to get me to sleep, maybe it'll help you sleep. And if I can't, I do have the comfort of knowing that there's a Monster Hunter update. So I can hunt Arch-Tempered, and New Ultra endlessly. I can get really good at it, and then call the boys later tonight and hunt the thing to death. Be like, oh yeah, nah, this is what we need to do. We need a couple of adapt gems. I'm looking forward to it. I didn't even realize until I hopped on Reddit that it had updated, so cool. I'm interested to see if there's any other events, or if we're gonna get we had Bad Blood 1 and 2 with the new Ultra set before, which is, I think it makes resentment stronger. So I've been running that with my attack build as Greatsword, where I have 2 pieces of Bell armor, which is makes your Greatsword do more damage, and 2 pieces of New Ultra for the Bad Blood, which makes resentment stronger. And because when you do a charge 2 attack with a Greatsword, it makes your swing stronger. You do another little damage thing, but it takes away your health, which activates resentment. You see, I normally just kind of do random things, or don't fully read or try to understand things in games like this. This is the first time that I've actually started thinking about builds and stuff, and I like it. It's nice. I hope it carries over to Path of Exile 2 when I inevitably get hooked by that again. I got this game called Founder that I need to try out. My buddy, Best Bud, is a huge MMO nerd, or was back in the day. Loved WoW. That's all he played. So he's been looking out for MMOs, and he suggested that one. It costs money. I'm like, I don't want to pay for it, but if we're gonna play together, if I can play a game with you, sure, it's worth it. And I want a good MMO. Man, this the initial takeaway without having played it, just getting into the world. Yeah, no, it's just Overwatch with an MMO skin. He's loving it, and that's really turned me off. I love to make my own character. That's a large part of the fun. So it's I think instance dungeons with other players, pretty much. PvE focused, obviously, instead of PvP. So I'm interested to see how it's gonna turn out. I don't think I'm gonna like it though. I think it's gonna be money wasted, but if it gets me more time with him, that's cool. I got him into Path of Exile too, and whenever I go and visit, like a couple times a year now, we've been that's pretty much all we do. That Monster Hunter. It's pretty sweet. It's pretty cool. Have a good luck, Cheshire. I suppose we should begin with our first story in Finvarus. Let's have this up before I get started. 1, 2, 3. Okay. This first story is called What the Blizzard Brought. The blizzard was supposed to last 2 days. Then 2 became 3. Then it was on day 4, holed up at my cabin. The only thing I could see outside was the snow, a wide shifting void that obscured the rest of the mountain range. I looked for the stars out of habit, but they were gone, buried behind layers of the storm. The sky was black, thick with cloud and snow, and the night. The tree line, usually clear, was faint now. A smudge of darkness barely separated nature from the cabin. The thick snow blurred the edges, turning trees into shadows that shifted with the wind. What had once been a sharp, familiar boundary was now lost in the white of the snow and the darkness of the night. I was ready, at least. Before the storm hit, I had driven down the mountain to the nearby town to stock up on supplies, like I always do. I filled my good old Ford F-150 with food, water, and anything else I might need to ride out the worst of it. Back at the clearing of the cabin, I chopped firewood. I've already got enough stacked to last through the second ice age, but it gives me something to do. Something to break up all the quiet. All aspects of it, the rhythmic thunk of the axe hitting wood, the smell of fresh pine, the way the pile grows bigger with every swing. It all keeps me from thinking too much. I don't get visitors. That's not me being dramatic, it's just fact. The nearest neighbor is a 45-minute drive down the mountain, and that's when the roads are clear. When they're not, I haven't been for days. That's why when I heard a knock, I damn near dropped the mug of hot cocoa I was holding. It wasn't loud, just 2 slow, deliberate raps on the door. Then nothing. I stood there in the kitchen for a few seconds, just listening, waiting to hear it again. The storm was still growing strong outside, but underneath the wind, the silence settled again like a blanket. Neither a knock nor a door or a voice calling out followed. I figured I imagined it. Cabin fever and all that. It wouldn't be the first time. But I walked to the door anyway. Something in me wouldn't let it go. Could have been curiosity. Or maybe I was just so starved for company that I wanted there to be someone out there his early 20s, maybe. He could have passed for a college student if he wasn't half frozen. His face was pale as paper, lips blue, eyes wide and glassy like he wasn't all there. He still clung to his coat in heavy clumps, and he was shaking so hard his teeth were clacking together. God, I sighed before I even thought about it. He didn't answer. Didn't even look at me. Just stood there, trembling in the doorway like he didn't know where he was. I should have hesitated. Should have asked what he was doing out in the blizzard, who he was, how he got here. But I didn't. If I closed the door and he died there, I'd never be able to live with myself. That part of me, the part that used to be a husband, the part that could have been a father one day, still there somewhere, even if it's quieter now. Come in, I said. Come on, let's get you warm. He stepped inside without a word. The wind slammed the door shut behind him. He left a trail of melting snow behind him as I led him to the fire. His boots were soaked through. I had him sit on the old armchair by the hearth while I threw a couple of logs on and got the flames high. I asked if he was hurt. He didn't answer. Can you talk? I tried again. Tell me your name. Still nothing. Just that 1,000-yard stare. Like he was looking through the fire, past it. Like he saw something there I couldn't. He looked like hell. Pale skin and tight over the bone. Lips cracked, nose bleeding a little from the cold. I knelt down beside him to check for frostbite. And that's when I saw it. On the side, just below the ribs, his jacket torn and shirt soaked with blood, was a wound. A deep bite. Ragged, raw, and already turning dark around the edges. It wasn't new. A day old, maybe more. The skin around it was red and hot. You didn't say you were bit, I muttered, more to myself than him. He flinched when I touched it, the first reaction I'd gotten out of him. His eyes snapped to mine, wild, just for a second, then went vacant again. It didn't look like a wolf bite. I'd seen those before. Hell, I've seen worse back when I hunted more often. Wolves tear, rip, pull. This was cleaner. Too clean. I patched it up as best I could, cleaned it, wrapped gauze tight around his ribs. He winced, but didn't make a sound, just watched me, breathing shallow, like a cornered animal. After that, I set him up in the guest room. They had a bed, a thick blanket, and a space heater in the corner. He didn't say a word, Ben just lay down, curled in on himself, eyes still wide open. I left him there, closed the door gently behind me. The cabin felt smaller after that, like he brought something in with him. A weight, a shift in the air. I tried to shake it. I made myself tea, sat by the fire, and held a book in my lap I didn't read. I checked on him an hour later, He was asleep. Out cold. No fever. At least none that I could feel. I left the door cracked, just in case. I must have nodded off at some point. The fire was down to coals when I woke up. The house was quiet as a grave. I could hear the wind screaming against the windows, the old trees creaking out front, but nothing inside. No footsteps. No coffin. No movement from the guest room. I was about to check again when I heard the floorboard creak. He was standing in the hall, just watching me. I said, nearly spilling my tea. He blinked slow, looked around like he wasn't sure where he was. Sorry, he said, voice hoarse, dry. I didn't mean to scare you. It's alright, I said. You are lucky to be alive. What the hell were you doing up here? He scratched at his bandage. Hiking, he said. With my girlfriend, Emma. I waited. We were camping in the woods. Yesterday, a few nights before. Guide caught in the storm. Thought we'd hunker down. Ride it out. He stopped, his jaw tightened. We heard something, he said. Outside the tent. I thought it was wolves. Big ones. We stayed quiet. Didn't move, but it didn't matter. They tore through the side. He swallowed hard. Eyes wet now, but not crying. I ran. I didn't even see what they looked like, just teeth. It was wrong. Too many of them. Emma screamed and then his voice broke off. You didn't see her after that? He shook his head. I ran until I couldn't. Then I saw your cabin. You're safe now, kid. Just rest. He nodded, turned and walked back to the guest room like he had been sleepwalking. I tried going back to sleep, even poured myself another mug of cocoa just to have something warm in my hands. But the air felt heavier now, like it was pressing in on me, 1 inch at a time. Sometime after midnight, I heard the floor creak. I glanced up, expecting to see him again, maybe wandering the hall, confused. But there was no one. Just the faint sound of the bathroom door clicking shut at the end of the hall. The light spelled out in a thin line under the frame. I waited. 5 minutes. Then 10. The pipes groaned once. A long, low exhale, like the cabin itself was holding its breath. Then I heard glass break. I walked into the bathroom and cleared my throat loud enough for him to hear. No response. You alright in there? Still nothing. Steam started seeping out from under the door, slow and crawling, hugging the floor like smoke. It looked off, not sharp and white like a shower usually gives off. This was thicker, heavier, gray around the edges, like breath on fogged glass. I stood outside for another minute, then stepped closer. I pressed my knuckles against the door and knocked once, gently. "You hear me, son?" Silence. Not even the shuffle of movement. No cough. No running water. The wood felt cold beneath my hand, not warm like it should be with steam coming through. Just still and dead and cold. I leaned in, pressed my ear to the door, and listened. Nothing. Every instinct in me said, walk away. Let it be. The boy had been through hell. Maybe he needed time. Maybe he was sick. Maybe he just broke the mirror by accident. Maybe I was imagining things again. But my gut had gone cold, and it wasn't from the storm. I wrapped my hand around the knob. It was slick with condensation. I turned it slowly, as quiet as I could, until the latch gave way to a soft click. Then, holding my breath, I gently opened the door. And what I saw, it shook me. The kid was split open vertically down the middle, bisected with a horrific precision that ran from the crown of his head through his nose, mouth, and sternum, all the way down to his groin. The bathroom looked like a butcher's block, the tiled floor underneath stained with something dark and moist. His two halves rested on the floor like broken mannequins, separated by a sickening foot of space. Ribs, stark wide and splintered, jutted like snapped fences. Muscle still glistening and unnervingly pink hung in strips. The cord links of his intestines and the dull-spilled organs lay exposed and motionless on the floor, some still clinging to one half of the body. There was an emptiness where his spine should have been, a hollowed-out canyon running through his core. It was as if something massive had forced its way out from the inside. The precision of the split through bone and gristle was alien. Wrong. Then, through the haze of shock, a draft hit me, a bone-deep cold that had nothing to do with the storm outside. My eyes, still wide and unfocused, slowly tracked it. The small bathroom window, usually so tight against the mountain air, was shattered. Not just cracked, but exploded outward, as if something had exited through it. Jagged shards of glass glittered on the sill and floor. The fierce wind howled through the gap, bringing with it a stinging spray of snow. And from half of the young man's body that was closer to a window, a trail began. A glistening, repulsive path of black and dark red slime snaked across the pristine white tiles, past the gurgling toilet, over the shattered glass, and through the broken window frame, disappearing into the white void of the blizzard. I thought I was blood, but it was thick, viscous, and seemed to pulsate faintly in the dim light, leaving an oily sheen in its wake. Whatever had been inside him, whatever had ripped him apart and then fled, had left this horrifying signature. I finally felt my breath. It was cold. Panicked gasp that tasted of iron and the strange stink coming off the floor. I backed away slowly, never taking my eyes off the split halves, off the black and red trail that snaked across the tiles. Every instinct screamed to run. Not down the mountain. I'd never make it, but away from this room. It was out there now. Something that hid inside a man, then discarded the skin to crawl through a broken window into a night that would kill anything normal. The thought of it sliding down the mountain, of it reaching the small, defenseless town I had just driven through days ago, made adrenaline surge through paralysis. It couldn't make it to town. Not on my watch. My feet moved before my brain gave the order. I didn't bother closing the bathroom door. The horror had already escaped. I moved past the living room, where the cozy glow of the fire felt like a cruel joke, and into the master bedroom. I went straight into the closet. Tucked behind my winter gear, right where I always kept it, was a Remington 870. I pulled it out. The cold still of the pump action of familiar weight in my hands. I grabbed the box of double-aught buckshot from the shelf, spilling a handful of crimson shells into the carpet. But I didn't stop to pick them up. I loaded the shotgun quickly, the sharp metallic shik of the shells cutting through the roar of the wind. It had been years since I pointed a gun at anything that wasn't a deer. But looking at the slick, dark trail leading out of my house, I knew this wasn't hunting a living being. This was stopping something that was already dead. Something that had worn death and shed it. I wasn't a hero. I was just a widower in a cabin, a shotgun, and a terrifying realization. I was the last line of defense. The storm that had trapped me, I had trapped it too, on the mountain. I held the shotgun steady, my knuckles white. The wind howled outside, the trees creaked, and I checked the hall one last time, glanced at the horror show of the bathroom, then moved towards the front door. There was no plan. There was only the gun in my hands, worry in my heart, and the knowledge that something sinister was crawling through the snow towards civilization. I flipped the deadbolt and hit the door with my shoulder. The wind was a physical blow. A sudden, blinding white sheet that stole my breath and stung my eyes. The roar of the storm swallowed the world around. There was a complete whiteout. My eyes searched frantically for the trail. The front porch was already buried under a fresh drift, but I knelt down, shielding my face against the immediate sting of the snow. There it was, still outside the bathroom window on the other side of the perimeter. The oily black and crimson slime was already freezing, but it hadn't been buried yet. It was distinct, lying on the otherwise clean snow like spilled ink. It didn't just drip. It looked like something had slithered. Let me drink some more water. I followed it, sinking immediately into the drifts up to my knees. The air was so cold it burned my lungs. I kept the Remington high. Its barrel was dark, steady presence against the blinding white. The trail, growing in width as I followed, led past the wood pile and head directly for the tree line. The trees themselves were black specters against the night, swaying and groaning under the weight of the snow. I fought against the resistance of the deep snow, pushing myself faster, driven by the metallic reek of the slime that, even in the freezing air, seemed to linger. I was maybe 20 yards from the cabin, battling a sudden heavy gust when I saw it. At first, I thought it was a buck driven mad by the storm. It was easily that size, low to the ground, its dark shape barely discernible in the whirling vortex of snow where the cabin's clearing met the forest's edge. But it didn't move like a deer. It didn't trot or bound. It scuttled. It was hunkered down, its massive body creating a brief moment of stillness in that blizzard. A small black shadow against the white fury. I stopped dead, sinking deeper into the drift. I raised the shotgun, pushing the safety off with a dry click. Through the shifting veil of snow, I straightened to make out details. And the details I found were strange. It was hairy, thick black fur, matted and clotted. The fur was plastered down in clumps, matted thick in the same crimson slime that lined the floor of my bathroom. This bulk seemed to be expanding, the hair giving it an immense distorted volume, but the low hunched posture suggested it was something that preferred to crawl. It had multiple limbs, too many, working and seemed to move it along the ground. Thick, jointed appendages that glistened unnervingly. The sight was a sickening contradiction. The heavy, dense covering of fur mixed with the raw, unnatural sheen of slime. It looked like a living, wet wound covered in an animal's coat. Then it lifted something. Its head, I realized with a shudder of pure dread. It was impossibly large and angular, but I couldn't discern a face. Then, the wind cleared the snow just enough for me to see a flash of wet, sickly red where eyes or a mouth should have been, reflecting the distant faint light from my cabin window. It didn't see me. It seemed entirely focused on the darkness of the tree line, already beginning to merge with shadows. It was moving, still low and fast, dragging its huge, repulsive body away from the cabin and towards the mountain pass that led to town. I gripped the shotgun, ignoring the trembling of my own body. The blizzard made the shot difficult, but the distance was short. If I let it reach the shelter of the trees, it would be gone. I took the slack out of the trigger. There was no hesitation left in me, just the immediate primal need to stop this monstrosity before it vanished. I squeezed the trigger. The sound of the Remington going off was deafening. A violent boom that shattered the stillness of the storm. The flash of the muzzle momentarily burned the image of the creature into my retina. I felt the powerful kick of the shotgun against my shoulder, and a split second later, the buckshot slammed into the creature's massive torso. It didn't go down. Instead, The thing let out a sound that cut right through the howling wind. A screaming wail that was entirely inorganic, like tearing metal on a wet, ripping canvas. It was the noise of pain, but also of inhuman rage. And as in a spirit of pure terror through my chest. The section of his body where the shot hit seemed to absorb the impact, scattering a spray of the thick, dark slime and a few clumps of matted hair into the air. It scrambled. The monstrous body, for all its bulk, moved with terrifying speed, abandoning the relatively clear ground and lunging into the dense black of the tree line. I pumped the action, ejecting the spent shell and loading a fresh round. Cluck, choke. I didn't want to see if it was mortally wounded. I just knew I had to keep it moving, keep it from burrowing down and reaching the pass. I plunged into the forest after it, following the fresh, dark disturbance in the snow. The trees offered a brief, deceptive shield from the worst of the wind, but the snow was deeper here, making every step a labor. I focused only on the trail, the churned snow, the scattering slime, the deep, heavy indentations of its multiple limbs. I ran until my lungs burned, until the cold made the skin on my face ache, until the sounds of its desperate, laborious breathing were drowned out by my own. Then I stopped. The trail vanished. One moment I was following a distinct line of destruction. The next, the snow was pristine, only marked by my own clumsy boot prints. I moved forward a few more steps, scanning the blizzard-shrouded ground, wondering if the heavy snow had worked against me and buried the signs, but no. The trail had not slowly faded. It had ended completely, as if the creature had simply dissolved into the air. I rotated slowly, the shotgun trembling slightly in my grip, my eyes uselessly searching around the area. My breath edged. I caught it only as an indistinct smear of shadow, a sudden movement of my peripheral vision high above me. I tilted my head back, staring up into the shifting wind-whipped canopy of the pines. There was no ground trail because the trail had continued up. The dark, oily slime wasn't on the shadow anymore. It was smeared high on the bark of the nearest trees, running in sickening vertical streaks. The monster hadn't slowed. It had simply used the vertical space of the forest offered. It had the high ground. It was above hidden by the night and the dense pine needles, and I was exposed beneath it. My heart hammered in my ribs. I had gone from the hunter to the obvious slow-moving target. I scanned the dark trunks of the nearby pines, searching for any break, any shelter that might afford me a moment of cover. About 10 feet away, a massive ancient pine had been partially uprooted long ago, its gnarled root system exposed. The dirt and thick woody roots had formed a dark protective cave against the elements. I dove towards it, dropping my hands and knees into the snow. I wedged myself into the space beneath the largest root, pulling the shotgun close to my chest. My back pressed against the cold, frozen earth. I held perfectly still, straining my ears against the wind, forcing myself to shrink into the shadows of the earth. was silent again, save for the storm. The vast black space between the high branches and the low earth was now where the true danger lay. I looked up through an opening in the uplifted roots, seeing only the tangle of darkness. I waited for a drop of slime, a tremor of a branch, or the silent, horrifying moment when that massive, hairy, glistening shape would descend. I stayed perfectly still, trying to slow the panic rush of breath. The silence, punctuated only by the wind, was unbearable. The creature was somewhere above, hunting for the man that had just fired the loud, disruptive weapon. Then, the snow began to sift down. Not from the storm, but from the branches above. Chunks fell, followed by a sudden heavy thud just yards away. It had dropped. The creature was on the ground again, but now it wasn't scrambling away, it was waddling. A fast, deliberate, low-to-the-earth movement, like a massive glistening insect trying to appear harmless. Its bulk seemed even more immense now that it was no longer distorted by the heights, and I could hear the wet squelching sound of its many appendages on the snow. It moved slowly into the small clearing around my hiding spot. I was pressed so tightly against the frozen roots that the wood dug painfully into my spine, but I didn't dare flinch. I had already positioned the Remington. My shooting hand gripped the trigger. The barrel angled slightly up and out towards the opening of the root cave, resting against the snow-covered ground. The creature's movement was erratic, darting toward the tree line one moment, then pulling back. Why hasn't it found me? Then I realized it wasn't looking for me. Its massive, misshapen head was constantly sniffing the air, lifting and twisting with jerky movements. The air was thick with the howling blizzard and the scent of dry, damp pine and frozen earth. The storm was masking my scent. The wind and the heavy blowing snow were scattering and nullifying my presence, covering the fresh trace of gunpowder and adrenaline. I was lucky. The storm had become my unintentional ally. After a few minutes, the sniffing paid off. The waddling ceased, and its massive, slimy, hairy form turned directly towards my root cave. It approached the gap between the thick roots, filling the dark space with its bulk. It was so close I could feel the minute vibrations of its weight distributing on the ground. And then, its head lowered. The snow cleared just long enough for me to see the details that I hadn't been able to discern in the blizzard. Its head was roughly the size of a buck or moose skull, but hideously wrong. The bone structure was too broad, too blunt. It had no discernible eyes, just wide swaths of slick white flesh the color of old blood. It wasn't just fur that covered it. Its thick, dark hair was matted with the slime, forming a repulsive, heavy mane. And sped within this mane were a horrifying number of short, glistening, leech-like appendages that writhed slightly in the cold air, tasting and searching. Then, there was inches from my face. I could smell the metallic stench of the black slime mixed with the sour, coppery odor of raw meat. I was looking into the mouth of the nightmare that had walked out of a man. One of the slick worm-like appendages darted out, brushing against the tip of my nose. In that instant, I knew. The thing recoiled slightly, his large blonde head drawing back, the wet flesh of his face tightening into an expression of immediate primal recognition. The mill was found. The obstacle identified. It was about to strike. I didn't let it. I drove the barrel of the Remington up and sideways, the muzzle flash nearly touching the side of his monstrous head. The blast was muffled and wet, an awful, contained thunder. The buckshot tore into the creature's skull from below, and the thing erupted. A horrifying geyser of black slime, wet fur and bone fragments sprayed into the roots above me. The creature shuddered once, a massive muscular tremor before its great weight collapsed. And it didn't fall on me, thankfully, but it landed directly outside my hiding spot, its massive body completely blocking the entrance. I lowered the shotgun, the noise of the ringing in my ears louder than the wind. I was trapped beneath a mountain of steaming, reeking horror. The ringing in my ears faded slowly, replaced by the sickening sound of hot, wet matter sizzling on frozen snow. I was entombed. The creature's immense cooling mass was pressed up against the root system, sealing the entrance to my makeshift bunker. I could hear the wind now, muffled by the sheer volume of dead, hairy flesh. I lowered the hammer on the shotgun slowly, my entire body shaking with a delayed, violent reaction. The smell was overwhelming now. A blast of copper, sulfur, and the sour stink of the creature's slime. The muzzle of the Remington was coated in gore. I had to get out. If the blizzard kept up, I'd be trapped here beneath the rotting carcass until the spring melt. I shoved the shotgun's barrel against the creature's flank, testing the weight. No movement. It was like pushing a felled, waterlogged oak tree. I shifted my weight, reaching with my free hand, and finally found the edge of the root that had protected me. I pressed my shoulder against the dirt wall and pushed, straining. The corpse moved an inch, then sank back. I had to try a different way. I turned the shotgun around and used the thick, heavy butt of the stock to scrape away the dirt and pack the snow behind me, burrowing deeper into the root system. The ground was hard and frozen, but the shotgun butt gave me just enough leverage to widen a small, cramped gap between two lateral roots. Gasping, I barely squeezed through the opening. I emerged on the far side of the massive pine, away from the creature's bulk. I stood up slowly, my heartbeat pounding in my temples, and walked back over to look at the kill. It lay motionless, its multi-limbed body comforted awkwardly on the snow. But something was wrong. Where the head had been, there was only a ruin of black fur and pulp bone, yet a thin, milky white steam was rising from the wound. And then I noticed the blood, or lack of it. It wasn't bleeding out. The dark, black-red slime was slowly oozing, congealing almost immediately in the bitter cold. The buckshot had caused massive trauma, but the creature's internal volume seemed insufficient for its size. Felt like I had shot a sack of thick fluid rather than a complex biological organism. My eyes caught something on the creature's massive flank where the first blast of buckshot had hit. The matted fur had been stripped clean, revealing the skin beneath. It was pale, slick, and thin, stretched tight over the enormous frame. The skin was still visibly healing, slowly knitting itself back together. The gaping holes from the shot were shrinking, the raw pink red tissue pulling out toward the center point. It was a terrifying, impossible regeneration. The steam wasn't from cooling blood. It was from a burning internal process. My breath hitched. The entire premise of this battle, that a shotgun could stop it, was a lie. I had maybe 10 minutes before it was functional again. I had to get back to the cabin, not just for ammunition, but for something heavier, something more final. I turned and ran like a madman. The snow was swallowing my footing, the low branches whipping my face. The familiar track back to the cabin was a blur of white and black, driven by the cold fear that the monster would simply stand up behind me. I burst through the door, slamming it shut and throwing the deadbolt, though I knew a simple piece of metal wouldn't hold that bulk for long. I raced past the silent horror of the bathroom and into the storage closet. I didn't grab the deer rifle. A bullet was a coin toss, but fire was a guarantee. Tucked behind the winter trees were 2 red 5-gallon jerry cans, one for the snowmobile, one for the backup generator. Grabbed a can of kerosene too. It would burn slower and hotter than gasoline. I yanked it out. Next, I needed a wick. I dove into the kitchen, grabbed the thickest rag I could find, a towel used for drying dishes, and stuffed it into my pocket. The light was my last stop. I opened the kitchen drawer and snatched a long, thin butane lighter used for starting the pilot light. I was ready, but not fast enough. The quiet, heavy silence I endured for the past few minutes was broken by a sound I'd only heard when cutting down trees. A slow, heavy, ripping sound coming from the side of the cabin. The side where the bathroom window was. It had found its way back. The hole it had created to exit the young man's body wasn't large enough for its current monstrous size, and it wasn't trying to climb through the window. It was tearing the wall apart. I could hear the sickening crunch of frozen pine breaking the sound of thick, sapping wood. I had to assume it was fully healed or close enough to it. The storm, which had given me cover, now threatened to bury me inside my own cabin if I wasn't careful. I had to take fire to the monster. I yanked open the front door, the kerosene can heavy and cold in my hand, and plunged back out into the blizzard. The creature wasn't at the door. I rounded the corner of the cabin, the heavy kerosene sloshing, and saw the damage. A huge section of the wall near the bathroom door was ruined. Wood splintered and insulation steaming out like cotton guts. The creature was there, its massive, steaming head pulled back from the shredded wall. It saw me instantly. The bluff of the blizzard had been called. I was standing in the open and it was less than 20 feet away. It began its repulsive, slow waddle toward me. Its limbs churned in the snow. The black slime glistened. Its regenerating head tilted low. It was honed in on me. I dropped to a knee, pulling the heavy can close. I twisted the plastic cap off and tore the towel from my pocket, shoving one end into the neck of the can to soak. The stench of the oil and the creature's musk mingled horribly in the cold air. The monster was 10 feet away. I didn't try to aim. I just tipped the heavy can and began to drench the path between us as I walked backwards. I emptied half the 5 gallons in a wide black arc into the snow and across the creature's forelimbs. The kerosene didn't mix well with the snow. It simply stained it, turning the white ground into a shimmering black slick. The creature didn't stop. It waddled right through the flammable pool, its greasy fur absorbing the oil. As the beast closed its distance, close enough now that I could feel the steam emanating off its bulk, I pulled the soaked towel out, threw the can aside, and flicked the butane lighter. The thin, blue flame fought the wind for a fraction of a second, then held. With a final desperate roar to myself, I lit the kerosene-soaked rag like a torch and threw it directly at the monster. It hit the creature's torso, and the effect was instantaneous and brutal. The oil-soaked fur and the slick, saturated snow trail ignited with a violent whoosh. The flames were furious, and a shocking blast of orange and red against the white snow. The creature was engulfed in a terrible screaming pillar of fire. The kerosene in the creature's own slick, greasy essence fed the flames instantly, making them burn with a blinding hot intensity. The monster shrieked, a sound of agony and pure animal terror, and began to thrash violently in the fire. It wasn't waddling anymore. It was rolling in the snow, trying to beat out the inferno. Fortunately for me, the flame stuck to its oiled coat like glue. It was a chaotic, burning silhouette against the backdrop of the swirling blizzard. The thick black smoke was lost immediately in the swirling white. Backed away. The heat of the fire was a shocking contrast to the bitter cold. I watched the creature convulse, unable to stop the burning, unable to heal what was being systematically destroyed. The smell of burning hair, oil, and something metallic sweet was nauseating. Finally, after a minute that felt like an hour, the thrashing stopped. The creature lay still, a massive charred monument to my desperate resolve. The fire still raged, but the movement was gone. I leaned against the icy wood of the cabin, the shotgun forgotten at my feet. The flames were already starting to melt a ring of snow around the body, but the blizzard continued to rage. The intense heat from that burning carcass was already beginning to recede, fighting a losing battle against the continuous onslaught of the blizzard. I stood for a moment, letting the sheer exhaustion wash over me before the pragmatism and determination of the mountain man kicked in. The fire was dying, and what was left of this thing couldn't be allowed to heal, or even to rot. I grabbed the heavy kerosene can and empty the last of its contents onto the smoldering pile, coaxing the flames back into a furious consuming roar. I moved the equipment inside, then returned to the blazing carcass with my axe. It took a sickening 15 minutes of hacking and separating what little was left of the creature's bulk. I dragged the black, escaping chunks through the snow and tossed them back into the heat of the blaze. The air was thick with the stench of oil and the sweet, horrible smell of burning meat. I was purged in the mountain of this evil. When I was done, only a patch of melted snow and a few glowing embers remained. I stood over the pyre, the axe handle cold in my numb hands, watching the last of the embers fade into a furious white. I turned, then intending to head back inside, locked the doors and faced the grim reality of the split body of the bathroom. That's when I heard it. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't the groan of a tree. It was a faint, wet, screaming wail, identical to the sound the creature had made when the buckshot first hit. The sound of ripping canvas and tearing metal. It came from the same direction as the first time, from the depths in the tree line, from where the young man had come. I spun around, bringing the axe up like a shield, searching the blinding, swirling storm. My mind immediately went to the rifle, the thing I had left behind in the house of my haste. I had nothing but a bloody, snow-covered axe and a dead fire. The well came again, this time closer. I pitched and choked. I took a step backward, preparing to fight, when a memory finally pierced the fog of panic. The young man's vacant eyes. The young man's story. Hiking with my girlfriend, Emma. It's pretty good. What's up, Stilly? Also, Penguin and Stilly. Let's have this up together. 1, 2, 3. He's gonna let himself on fire? Oh, no, thankfully not. Although that might be better. Let's see. What time is it now? We do have another story here. Getting ready for work. I was gonna sleep in and I saw you going, so I got up. Oh no, get that sleep. Get that sleep. They told me the town flooded years ago, but I just walked through it. I had been back to my hometown in over 30 years. After my mother died, there wasn't much of a reason to. She had been the last thing tying me there. But when I saw the headline, 30 years since the Greenville flood, something twisted inside me. I don't know why I did it, but that same weekend, I got in my car and drove back. The highway was longer than I remembered, and for the last 20 miles there were no other cars, just empty stretches of road lined with trees that felt too still. When I finally reached the turnoff, The old Welcome to Greenville sign was still standing, leaning to one side. Someone had spray painted over it. Closed area. Keep out. But the road beyond looked fine. Not washed out. Not collapsed. Just forgotten. I expected ruins, but what I found was a home. The houses stood exactly where I remember them. Same cracked sidewalks, same lampposts. The gas station on the corner still had the faded sign for a 79-cent coffee. But what made me stop was the people. There were people. An old man mowing his lawn. A woman hanging clothes out to dry. Kid riding a bike past me. The same model I had when I was 10. I slowed down, rolled my window down. Hey, I called out to the man mowing. Is this Greendale? He cut the mower's engine and looked at me as if I asked if water was wet. Of course it is. He smiled politely and went back to mowing. I parked near my old street. The pavement was cracked but familiar. I half expected to see my tree house my brother and I built behind our yard, and when I walked down the block, I did. Same wood. Same rope ladder. Even the initials carved in the trunk, D&M, 1989. I reached out and touched them. The wood was dry, but the letters felt freshly cut. A chill ran through me. My old house looked untouched, paint a little faded, curtains still hanging in the same place. Someone was inside. Through the window, I saw movement. A woman walking through the kitchen. For a second, I thought maybe someone new had moved in. Then, she turned her head slightly, and I froze. It was my mother. Not older. Not changed. Exactly as I remembered her in 1994. I stepped back, heart pounding. The screen door creaked open and she stepped out, wiping her hands on a towel. "Danny," she said softly, "what are you doing out here?" Her voice, I swear to God, was real. I couldn't speak. She frowned a little. "You look pale. Come inside, dear." I followed her in. The smell hit me instantly. Coffee and lavender detergent. Everything was in its place. The same furniture. Same tablecloth. Even the same photo of Dad on the mantle. I thought. I started. She turned to me, smiling faintly. "You thought what?" "I thought you." I couldn't finish the sentence. She smiled again, poured me a cup of coffee and said, "You should rest. You've been going a long time." I sat down, shaking, and everything felt real. Too real. After a while, I went outside to get some air. The street was quiet, the air heavy with that thick pre-storm humidity. Down the road, I saw someone standing by the old town square. A man about my age, wearing a tan jacket. He waved me over. When I got closer, I realized he did look familiar. Couldn't place him until he spoke. "You shouldn't be here," he said. What do you mean? His eyes darted to the houses around us. It's not what it looks like. They don't move on here. They just stay the way they were. I swallowed hard. Who are you? He hesitated and said, You were in my class. Fielding. Marcus Fielding? The name hit me like ice. Marcus had lived 2 streets over. He had drowned in the flood trying to save his sister. But there he was, standing in front of me. I must have gone pale because he said, You really don't remember, do you? Remember what? He pointed toward the riverbed. None of this should exist. The water took everything. I followed his gaze. From here, I could see the church steeple, the houses, the quiet streets. Everything was still and perfect, like a photograph frozen in time. Marcus sighed. You didn't make it out either, Dan. I laughed, a shaky, hollow sound. I'm right here. He shook his head. So am I. When I looked back toward the houses, the lights were on in every window, glowing, warm, yellow, steady. But no one was moving inside. The shapes behind the curtains were still. Don't let them talk to you again, Marcus said quietly. Once you believe it, you stay. And then it was gone. Not vanished, just gone. Like he had never been there. I ran back to the house. The front door was open. The TV was playing softly, a weather broadcast from decades ago. Residents are advised to evacuate immediately as water levels rise. The image flickered. My mother was sitting in her chair, staring at the static screen. Mom, I said, voice shaking. She turned to me, her eyes blank, unfocused. Dinner's almost ready, she said. Your brother's still outside. Her voice trembled, like an old recording. I stumbled out into the yard. The air felt thicker now, and the smell. Not lavender anymore, but mold and river silt. Down the street, water shimmered at the intersection. At first, I thought it was rainwater. Then I realized it was spreading, slow, steady, reflecting the yellow lights. I ran to my car, started the engine, and turned down the main road. But the sign was gone. The road curved endlessly through the fog. The radio crackled and came a voice. Mine. You shouldn't be here. I don't remember how I got out. I just woke up the next morning on the side of the highway, 30 miles from Greenville. My car was parked on the shoulder, keys still in the ignition. I tried to drive back, but the turnoff wasn't there. Trees were thicker. The road freshly paved. I asked the gas station attendant about Greenville. He frowned. That place flooded back in '94. The whole town went under. They built a reservoir over it. He pointed toward the valley. You can still see this church steeple when the water's low. I drove there. He was right. The steeple was there. Rusted, barely visible through the surface, and near the edge of the memorial plaque half buried in the moss. I found it. My name. Daniel. I touched it. The metal was cold, and for a moment, just a moment, I swore I could hear someone calling me home. Just 20 minutes and always leaves me rushing and panicking. Yeah, that's always a fun time. Let's see. This seems to be a somewhat short story. Let's see. Get stretch. Okay. Thank you, Stelly. Thank you. Let's see. Let me drink some more water. This one is titled, My New Job Sounded Like the Perfect Escape Until I Found the Rules That Could Get Me Killed. $200,000. 6 months. Cash up front. When I saw the offer, my first thought wasn't scam, it was salvation. That money would clear my gambling debts and make those thugs disappear from my mother's doorway forever, so I signed without hesitation. The contract stressed absolute isolation. Food and water were already stocked. The only contact was a bi-monthly supply drop. For a guy who wanted to evaporate, this felt tailor-made. The helicopter that dropped me off treated me like garbage. The pilot's eyes didn't hold pity. They looked at me like a piece of meat already placed in the freezer. Lookout Tower number 7. A rickety metal can perched on a mountain peak, groaning in the wind. It was so high I had no intention of ever climbing down. The former lookout didn't leave much, but carved into the desk, deep enough to almost punch through the wood, were 4 words. You are not alone. I thought it was about the recruitment company's lies. I pulled out the empty drawer and found the crumpled, sweat-stained piece of paper. 5 protocols of Lookout Tower number 7. Number 1. Every night at exactly 12 a.m., the entrance and all windows must be locked. Draw the curtains. Be precise. 2. Never respond to any cries for help. No matter how desperate they sound, they are not human. 3. If the radio starts playing jazz music outside of communication hours, Immediately cut the main power source to the tower. Wait 10 minutes in complete darkness and silence. Don't make a sound. 4. Never look directly at any reflection that appears on the window glass at night. It's not entirely you. 5. In the food storage room, only eat the blue labeled cans. The red labeled ones are not for us. I laughed, pinning the list to the wall as a piece of dark humor from my predecessor. The first month, I lived like a dead man walking. Daytimes were spent staring at the forest, sometimes greeting a one-eyed crow I called Blackie, who landed on the railing at 3 p.m. every day. The radio never worked, only a static, a broken piece of junk. I hoped I'd never need it. Everything was quiet. Until I broke the first rule. I had won a round of solitaire against myself and had a few too many cups of instant coffee. The broken wall clock was chiming midnight when I realized it was late. I rushed to lock the door but missed one window curtain, and as I turned, I saw it. It was a thing, not a beast, not a ghost, but a mistake. It stood on the forest edge like a stretched, twisted black ink blot. His limbs were distorted at angles that defied anatomy, his head cocked sideways. It was still, but I knew it was watching me. My buzz evaporated instantly. I scrambled to pull the curtain shut, my heart hammered against my ribs like a caged bird trying to escape. From that night on, I stopped laughing. I considered leaving, but I knew I couldn't make it to civilization before dark. Staying here, despite the terror, was my only safe option. A few nights later, I woke up screaming. A woman's voice, raw and frantic. "Help, is anyone there? Save me." My hand froze an inch from the radio. Rule number 2 was burned into my mind. I didn't dare respond. I shut off the lights and huddled in the corner like a coward. The wailing went on for almost an hour, then abruptly turned into a low, satisfied chuckle. It sounded like it was pressed directly against the steel structure of the tower. It knew I was listening. The threat escalated. One afternoon, the radio came to life on its own, blasting cheerful 1930s jazz, laced with vinyl static. My blood turned to ice. As the tower lights began to flicker like a dying heart, I dove for the main breaker. I pulled the lever with all my strength. The world went black. Then I heard it. A wet, heavy sound, slowly dragging itself across the glass of the observation deck windows. Viscous. Slow. 10 minutes in that dark felt longer than the last 30 years of my life. The second supply drop came at the end of the second month. The helicopter dropped the crate nearby and immediately flew off without even waving. My heart sank. I was stuck here. I hauled the supplies into the storage room. At the bottom of the empty crate, I saw it. A single red label can. It was placed carefully under a layer of foam like a reminder. My blood ran cold. The supplies weren't just for me. They were for that thing, too. Just when I thought I got used to dealing with the things outside, Rule number 4 shattered my reality. That night, I unconsciously glanced up. I saw the reflection on the glass. I immediately snapped my head away, but that glimpse was enough. The me in the reflection was smiling. It was a smile I was incapable of. One filled with pure, unadulterated malice. The nature of fear changed completely. I covered most of the windows and walked around staring at the floor. The thing in that reflection was waiting for me to make eye contact again. I knew if I did, it would find a way in. This made me obsess over Rule 5. The red labeled cans were still in storage. Who were they for? The true terror hit on a stormy night when I woke up and found one red can missing. The doors were locked, the windows intact. Something had been inside and taken his food while I slept. The 4th month's resupply was agonizing. The helicopter came and dropped the box. It left as quickly as the first time. I dragged the crate in, and at the bottom, there was the same unsettling sight. Another single red label can, a cruel little gift. Today is the last day of my contract. I stayed up all night. When the sound of the rotors finally grew close, I felt no joy, just numb relief. I watched the helicopter land. A man in a uniform waved and his voice boomed through a loudspeaker. "Alex, we're here to take you home. Open up." I rushed to the door, my hand grabbing the handle, but my eyes fell on the old, wrinkled paper. Faintly written under the original 5 rules, I saw a line I never noticed before. Rule 6. When you think you're rescued, do not open the door. Imitation is a specialty. I slowly backed away, and after a few minutes the voice outside changed. The warm call became higher pitched, a metallic shriek. "Open the door, Alex." The banging made the entire tower shudder. I knew the structure wouldn't hold. I couldn't open the door, but I couldn't wait to die either. I grabbed my backpack. I smashed the observation window and slid down the rusty fire escape ladder. I didn't get far before I heard the entire lookout tower groan and collapse behind me. I ran without looking back, pouring every ounce of adrenaline into my legs. I ran all night until it collapsed, covered in mud. A forestry ranger found me the next morning. They said I was delirious, clutching a crumpled paper. They said I was hallucinating. But I know the truth. I survived. I'm free. But it's not over. I rented a small apartment in the city, but my life hasn't returned to normal. My paranoia has bled into every single day. I only allow myself to eat blue labeled cans now. It's become my personal standard of safety. Every few days I conduct a quick, fully clothed procurement ritual at different grocery stores. I must find that specific blue can and make sure there are no red labels hidden on the shelves. I smashed all the mirrors in my apartment to keep the curtains drawn, yet I can still feel it. It wasn't trapped in that tower. It followed me home. Now, I sit here typing this. My cell phone, the device I thought was safe, the link to the civilized world, just went off by itself. 1930s jazz. It's using the only alarm I understand to remind me. I remember the paper. Taped it to my fridge now, replacing every shopping list. Don't believe anything you see, and don't believe anything you hear. And this situation, that list is the only thing you can trust. Have a good day, Stilly. Be safe, and hope you have a good day at work. Also, what's up, Nick? And what's up, Romar? Let's have that sip together. 1, 2, 3. I think that is where we're gonna call it for tonight. I don't know if I'll be able to sleep per se, but yeah, might play a little bit of Monster Hunter. See what the new stuff is all about. At least let it update. I don't know, but I thank you guys for being here. And yeah, this might be today's stream. We'll see what time I end up waking up if I manage to go to sleep. But yeah, take care. Have sweet dreams. And I'll see you sometime soon. Bye bye.